Hello, hello, hello. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Happy, happy, joy, joy. Hello, Ilmarin, how are you tonight? I got bit by a mosquito outside just a few minutes ago, and I'm such a sweet person, they naturally went straight to me. All right, so we are going to kind of carry on with some of what James started on Monday night, even though, he's a paint show. So we're going to talk about some of the things that he talked about with line of sight, indirect fire, and kind of have a better chance of answering questions, because me trying to type that stuff in Monday night sucked. So we're going to work on that a little bit. I've got some game aids that we'll be using here, so we'll be good there. But we'll give everybody a couple of minutes to get in before I get started. No, it's that, and that's something I'll cover tonight too, to kind of explain to people kind of what we're going for, what we're trying to do. I know you guys get parts of it when we talk about it, and we say something that we talked about that, and I know it can be confusing at times, so we'll try to clear that up a little bit as to what's going on tonight. But I hope everybody is having a very good Wednesday night. I'm managing to stay here at the shop and stay cool during the day. Hello, Cthulhu, as our air conditioner is out at our house, and we have no idea when we're getting our new one. Listening to the thunder. We had some roll through here this morning at about 7 o'clock. My wife was like, "Is it supposed to rain this morning?" And I said, "I don't think so." So it thundered for like 10 or 15 minutes, but it never did rain, but the humidity has sucked all day. Oh, we are. We've got our RV, our camper. So if it gets too bad, we can hide out there. It's just trying to have normal life and take care of the dogs, and yeah. It's all that good stuff. Both the boys are gone right now, so we will make it through there. But thank you for caring. Hoping James will show up tonight. Hey, I'm always sick. Colonel Kane, I may have to come stay with you. You're the closest one to me. We may come and stay with you and the goats. Hang out in the hot tub. Oh, that's scary. Sounds like the start of a convention story. Oh, yeah. We don't want any of those to get going. I've got some doozies. Just got the one go right now, and the hot tub is down. Ah, okay. Well, maybe we won't come and hang out with you then. Sounds like you're not having much fun. We are, as soon as we're going through stages. The air conditioner was on its last leg. I've milked it along for the last 2 years because we've been doing work to the house. And the next big project to the house is to have our basement redone. Our basement leaks. We live in an older house, so they're going to dig up around it and redo everything and fix everything. Well, when that got started, they were going to have to take the air conditioning system outside to get air and get everything out of the way. So the plan was, when the basement guys are ready to start, and of course this all got thrown off because of Corona, or the coronavirus last year. So we were hoping to milk it through until they could get started. Well, naturally, as all good plans of mice and men, it went to crap. So the air conditioner crapped out a week and a half ago. And of course, the basement guys aren't ready to start for another 2 or 3 weeks. And nobody had the air conditioner stuff in stock anyway, so they had to order it, and hopefully we'll get it all in. So they have to work around the basement guys. It's a mess. So, but worst case, like I said, we've got our camper we can go stay in. And it's big. It's like a 52-foot one. So, I mean, we got plenty of room for me and the wife. Not real wild about putting the dogs in there, though. And then, worst case, too, I'll go buy a couple of window units, throw them in the bedroom and the front room and call it good. But what all that story was getting to is, when all that is done, I am getting ready to add a lower deck to our bigger deck in the back, and we're going to put a hot tub on that dude. So that's an upcoming plan. Of course, I think the hot tub money might have got spent on the air conditioner. So, but we shall see. All right, so let us get started now that we have made a fool of myself with all my funky stories. Okay, so let me start off with some of the things that we have talked about, that we bring up, that James talks about and everything like that. Is there are things happening in the background as we are, and so some of the things that you hear us talk about are not official. They're official in the sense that they are coming, but nothing has been put down on a piece of paper and released, okay? And where this is all coming from is, this is more of a fallout from last year. Once Corona started and the conventions all collapsed, and everything just went to happening. I decided to start using that time to start moving things ahead and doing some things a little different, and those are some of the things that have affected the delay of the JOR and the campaign book and everything like that, because some of that is waiting on some other things. Throw into that the new miniatures and the new casting system and everything like that, and not having everything that I need, and people taking their time and not getting stuff in here. It's just dragged it all out. So right now it's all hands on deck. We're flying, we're moving, we're trying to get everything done so that we can push everything out and really take us to the next level. So that's where a lot of this is coming from. So things that James talked about and things that I typed about and things are things that I'm working on, that I'm moving ahead with, that will be in there. Because for all purposes right now, we have no rule books. Okay, we have sold out of our initial run of rule books, which was 5,000 copies. Now, I think there's a couple of cases down there, so it's not like if you didn't get a book, it's not the end of the world. So primarily, that's the reason why too, is we're not trying to outdate your rule book. But things need to be put into one place where they're easier to find, easier to read, make more sense. We've had that conversation before. We play test a game, we have games, we have people, we go to shows and everything like that. But until there's, you're getting feedback from 500 people or 1,000 people play the game or whatever. Hi, Tiger, how you doing? It's working. So anyway, so that's, things come up, things change, games evolve, and that's what we're moving into the next evolution of CAV. So with that being said, some of the things that James brought up and talked about, I wanted to go over in the sense of how some of that's being applied. Now, one of the things I've talked about last week is, I talked about, fire support, getting a free action for strike points, and recon models getting free lock-ons and everything like that. And one of the questions that Ilmarin brought up today that he messaged me on is, what about the guided missile fire support guys? So that don't need a strike point. Well, what's going to happen, and this is part of the restructuring, none of this is official, because I promised that I wasn't going to dick with the errata or anything anymore until we've got everything in one place. So, don't run out and say, well, CAVBoss told us we had to do this, because that's not what I'm saying. These are just things that are being tweaked that's coming down the pipeline. So we're going to have a restructuring of models. So some of these models, like let's take the Silverback, that's all these guided missile things and stuff like that. Some of those were set as fire support, but they're really not fire support. Since they're a direct firing mech, a CAV, they're really more of an attack. Now they may stay further back in attack, but they're still an attack model. And that's what's going to happen is a lot of these all guided missile things and stuff like that are going to drop out of fire support and move into as an attack model. So that addresses where that's going to happen. Now we are tweaking, correct, and that's a carryover from when guided missiles could still be fired indirectly. So, but another thing that's going to see a little bit of restructuring is anti-aircraft stuff. I kind of plugged a couple of things, put a couple of Band-Aids on it. Well, Todd and Ross was, but there was more of that too. So anyway, so I kind of put Band-Aids on anti-aircraft and stuff, and took, as we were trying to simplify some things down. Well, in that spirit, it's going to get that fixed. So like anti-aircraft is going to again become its own essay. So you'll be able to, take a model, give it anti-aircraft, and make it better than, another model with the same weapons or whatever. But as a result of that, those type of models that are better at anti-aircraft and things like that are going to become more of a specialist task, so that you'll be able to put them in a specialist squad, but you won't necessarily have them all in, you're not going to be able to take an attack squad full of cheetahs, okay? If you need that many cheetahs, you can put 4 cheetahs into the specialist squad and go on. And there's going to be some other tweaks there that'll change those a little bit like that too. But now, also take into account that if there's a variant, like there's a variant cheetah that is not really an anti-aircraft role, that model will still remain as an attack model or whatever it's supposed to be. So the models that are going to be more specialist are what they are. They're specialized models that are supposed to do specialized things. So that's where you'll start seeing those kind of get moved into that section. All right, any questions about what I talked about before I get into some of the line of sight stuff? Yeah, AA will become more of a deal. No, they'll be. That's just the way they'll end up. They'll still be staying that way, but if they're a higher damage towards the rocket side of things, they're going to be a fire support. If they're more directed towards the guided missiles and being a heavier in damage in that area, then they'll go to an attack. I'm working on kind of what's going to be what pushes it to one side or the other. And that's not to say that we might not go in and tweak one here or there or something like that, but that's what we're looking at right now. And some of these are being cleaned up too because of the JOR. We don't want everybody to be a cookie cutter, so we're kind of putting little stories and stuff in there. So those may affect the design a little bit. Yes. Yeah, they'll just have to decide which way they're going to be. But as far as which task that there is really primarily the direction of how they're built. So in that case, it may still be a little bit one way or the other, but things that are truly all guided missiles or whatever will go into an attack mode kind of thing. But and like I said, there's little things too that stuff that's be in the JOR that will show up in the campaign book. Like I was actually working on the Centurion today. So the original Centurion was, the story behind it was it had 2 particle bolt guns, not 4 like ours has. It has 2 particle bolt guns, but it had alternating barrels. Those alternating barrels allowed it to have a bigger charge, shoot a little further, et cetera, et cetera. So, of course, that's kind of represented in the fact that both the missiles and the particle bolt guns on the Centurion have what was I just getting ready to say? Oh, we both have piercing. So that kind of takes into account. So kind of going in with the story side of things, you talk about certain things in the background in the JR that really can't be as cookie cuttered as they are in the rules. So that's one of the things you'll see in the campaign book, is some of these models that have special things that we're not able to necessarily show through the normal set of rules. Will have you'll have little things that you can play in the campaign game. So like in the case of the Centurion, of course it's already got the extra power for the deal, but maybe instead of a 9 range, it'll have a 10 range. There are fire support GM platforms and stuff like that, but that'll go in there. So that's the little things that you'll see in the campaign book too as we move along, and that kind of flows into the next side of this. The stuff, obviously, I know there's all these different games and there's all the different ways that they do things and everything like that. The biggest problem that I have always had with games is people arguing over line of sight. And so rather than have this, what you see and kind of these arbitrary definitions and, oh, you roll or I roll or whatever, is I tried to stay with a very black and white system. And it works 90% of the time, but you sometimes get some weird things that you look at and you go, by the stuff on the board, that doesn't look right. Well, naturally, not everything is perfectly scaled to anything anyway. So that was the idea behind the line of sight rules. And they are being cleaned up so that they even go more to that side. So, that's where we talk about, when you're figuring out line of sights, go from center to center. Don't go from left side of base or outside of edge or whatever. Because everybody can be different, base sizes can be different shapes. It just gets into a crazy deal. And we never wanted the bases to be what controls the game. And that's the reason you can put them on round bases, hex bases, square bases, triangle bases, whatever you want to put them on there. Because we're all measuring from center to center. The only time that bases make any difference is if you go with a bigger base, and if your base touches a terrain object, then you have to pay for that object. So if you have a larger base and you're trying to move through a tight spot, you might not be able to move through that spot. You know, and that needs to be, you know, you have to kind of with a grain of salt with that. So, you know, take into account that whenever you're doing things. But that's the reason we go from center to center. Now, I generally play, and if you read CAV 2, you'll know we had that in there, is we kind of call it the line of sight corridor. Even though we go from center to center, I generally fudge kind of in a 1/4 inch category there. So if it's a little to the left, a little to the right, you know, I'm not going to argue over here. I'm not going to, there's no way that we are going to get a perfectly straight line out here 99% of the time so that there's no doubt whatsoever. If it's something that can be beneficial to either side, you know, the worst case is just roll. High roll chooses. So, but trying to get down and figure anything to a millimeter or something like that is just nuts. So, like I said, I generally on a game, I play with a kind of a 1/4 inch corridor. So, you know, if you're, yeah, but it's, a laser line is still not accurate because your hand shakes. You know, there's still a lot of, you know, if it's a short thing, maybe you'll get away with it. But you get on a longer trying to figure it out. I've seen too many times that the laser is off. It's not accurate. Truly, if you want the most accurate line of, and again, you know, if you're off a little onto the left, if you're off a little to the right, are you going to his center? Are you coming from your center? And deal like that. Literally the best way to determine if you're that anal about needing exact line of sight is rubber bands. Yeah, well, they're out there. We're going to allow that, but hopefully that doesn't come back to get us. But they are out there. But we used to take rubber bands and you break them in half, you know, you cut them in one place and you tie the ends together and you get this long piece of rubber bands. And literally you can take that rubber band and put it almost on the, you know, hold it onto the center of your guy. If you need to, put a stick down or whatever and go to the center of that guy and stretch that rubber band. And wherever that rubber band touches, then that's affecting line of sight. And it's got enough give, so if it catches a corner of a building, you know, you can see it go out. I mean, and those are truly the best way that I have found if you're that hung up on line of sight. That's where hex board games works out really, really well. And if you don't feel like tying rubber bands, you can go to you know, one of the fabric stores or something like that and get Joann's, you know, they make rubber bands for putting in hems and stuff like that. You can do that too. But you just want something that's not overly long, but that has enough stretch so that you can stretch it long. Because the longer you can stretch it, the straighter and better it gets from that side of it. All right. Keep losing my train of thought. Thanks, Tiger. All right, so with that being said, hex, that's what I was going to say, hex boards. That's why hex games are so really good for that. Very simple for line of sight because the edge of the hex, goes from center to center and you're good there. All right, so we're going to switch over here. All right, any more questions about anything that we've talked about before I switch over to talking about line of sight kind of things? Because we are getting ready to go here. All right, so I'm going to switch. We need to turn this camera on and I'm going to turn me off so that I'm not out in the middle of here. And then we need to turn off the CAV HQ. Let's see, text. Okay, there we go. Get everything all cleaned up. And hopefully, maybe I can zoom out just a little bit. You'll see my messy table. Okay, So that gives us a little bit more room there. We'll move this over here so it's not in the way. Okay. So first off, the thing that I brought up, Todd in here, we can't blame Todd, is a couple of words that I typed in on Monday night that you're going to see with the newer stuff. Yeah, I don't care. I don't care if he's not here or not. I'll blame whoever I want to blame. So, going forward, cover is going to be, it's still cover. There's no different in there. But cover is going to fall into two different categories. There is obstruction cover and there is obscure cover. Obstruction cover is just that. It is a wall, it is solid, it's a building, whatever. You can't see through it. Terrain that obscures, though, is like trees and smoke and everything like that. It's really not hard cover, but it can affect a shot. So that's where that's going to come into. And those will be important definitions when you come into, because terrain that obstructs can prevent damage. Terrain that obscures can affect the roll to hit, but it does not affect the damage. Okay? I mean, it does in the sense of how you roll, but I mean, it's not, okay? So the example that James was bringing up the other night, now I've got these dictators here. They've got like 50 millimeter bases on them. Somebody put on when we were painting them. I wanted to use these with the bigger bases so that it's a little easier to show. Everything that we're talking about as far as adjacent is always 1 inch. So I've got these clear hexes. They're 30 millimeters, but well, that's because it's probably because I'm moving stuff up and down. So, because my hands are going up and down. It's trying to autofocus. It'll get there. So anyway, so these hexes, they're 30 millimeters, but they're close enough for what we're doing here for 1 inch. So the thing that James was bringing up as far as damage and whatnot, we're gonna show here, and we'll set this guy over here. Okay. So right now, between the two dictators, there is this level 5 building, okay? This is obstruction terrain. That means it is a solid, it is there, they cannot see each other, so there is no direct line of sight. So they cannot shoot each other with direct fire. Now, indirect fire targets an area on the board. It doesn't target the model, though it usually works out that way because the model is standing on the section of board that you are. But if you are adjacent, which is within 1 inch, so we'll put our little 1 inch hex down here. You can sort of see it, sort of, kind of, maybe, like so. This will move it a little closer. That way it might be easier to see, because we're not really worried about range. All right, so to be considered adjacent to any terrain, part of your base has to be 1 inch or closer. So in this case, you can see he's tilted up. He is within 1 inch of that building. So he is considered adjacent to that building. Now, you can still target, and this is where it got kind of goofy with the autocannons, when we were talking about AOE and autocannons, and we're going to get into that too, is people think, or have an instance of, that when these guys fire rockets, that they're leaning all the way back and these things are going all the way up here and coming over and going down, okay? Or if they're targeting over here and they miss and it drifts and it drifts back here, that it went all the way over to here and then it popped back, okay? That's not what happens. First off, rockets are fired across, okay? They do go up to the air to a degree. Obviously, if they were trying to shoot over a level 5 building, they're going to have a little over there. We don't want to get into the whole every level figuring all that. So again, that's kind of it's an abstraction. But so he couldn't shoot over here and aim back here and hope that it drifts back this way, because it doesn't work that way. The drift is actually figured into the deal. So if he was shooting here, yeah, no trig. We're not going to get in trig. So let's say he chooses to aim back here. All right. He rolls for a miss and he rolls for a drift. It was not coming down here and then drifting back this direction. I know we call it drift, but where it drifted was as it came down. So this shot actually comes down, arcs over here, and comes down here. It didn't come back here and then come back. Okay. And that's where the same thing with AOE is on an autocannon, because we'll kind of jump over that right quick, is let's say these guys are standing here on the corner. Now, he can't, if he goes center to center, he catches the corner of this building and he can't see each other. But he can see the ground next to the guy's base. And yes, with a rack, rotary autocannon that has an AOE. So even though he can see the ground next to here and it has an AOE, the fact that the building is in between center to center means he cannot damage that guy, because again, he's not shooting it here and he's making a circle. What he's doing is he's raking it back and forth. Okay? So if he aims for here, he's going to go from an inch left, an inch right, and he's going to strafe back and forth. If the guy's in the front, the guy's behind him a little bit, he's targeting an inch ahead and he's strafing back and forth. So again, it's an abstraction, but in this case, if he started over here and started walking it across there in an attempt to do exactly, it's going to hit the building. So the center to center, even though he can see the ground a half inch away from the guy's base, and everybody's like, oh, well, it's got an AOE. We have to kind of use an AOE in the same language without it actually being. It's not a circle. It's not a circle of damage. It is an area that he sprays across, and in this case, if the center and center comes across here, he can hit the ground here, and if there's somebody standing here, he's going to shoot him. But the guy next to him is not going to get hit because the bullets that would have hit him hit the building. Okay? So, in the abstraction of cover, if you are within 1 inch of cover that obstructs, now remember here, that's the key word, cover that obstructs, not obscures, but obstructs, you cannot be damaged. Can you be targeted? Yes. Can you be damaged? No. So let's say that he wanted to, there's a guy right here behind him, okay? And he is, for whatever reason, still wants to target the ground that this guy that's up against the building is standing on. He can do that, all right? So he can roll, set that as a strike point. It comes down, it does its AOE, boom, whatever. But because this guy is within 1 inch of obstruction cover, he cannot take damage, because as it comes across here, the rounds or the rockets that would have hit him hit the building. Okay? And that's where that's coming from. And that's all it is. And that's the only time that it comes in. That's extra paperwork we're not going to dick with. If you want, because again, it's an abstraction. We're stating that, either the building took a rocket or it caused the rocket to, go to the left or right or whatever. However you want to put it in your head, the building just fucked it up, okay? So he's not going to take any damage. And again, there are certain instances where that would work out perfect, and there's other times that it's not. But one of the things it is able to do is it gives you, this is the only way in a game you can be safe and not be shot, okay, and take damage. Whether it's an airplane up in the air, whether it's this guy or whatever. Yeah, if you want to keep track of damage on buildings and that's something that you want to keep into there, you're more than welcome to do that. And again, you can take this to however nth degree that you want to. If you don't want to play center to center, if you want to play hex to base, or and look around and have this guy come right up to the edge, he's just kind of looking over. That's up to you. If you want to go through all that, that's fine. The rules are set up so that Bob goes to a convention or goes to a store and plays with Doug, and he's never done anything with Doug before. This is the first time that he's there with Doug. Bob plays one way, Doug plays the other way. Then they got to sit there and argue and figure out whose right way is right. This way, if this is the right way, this is the default, everybody goes back to this. This is how you play. If you want to play it any other way, you can, but this is how we're doing it for that deal. Your home games, however you want to put it up. If y'all want to wear pink tutus and everybody has to say Hello Kitty and take a shot, when somebody dies, that's up to you guys. So go for it. All right. Now, if he is not within 1 inch of cover, at this point, he can be damaged, okay? He still can't be shot direct fire because of the obstruction cover, but he can be damaged, okay? Now, and the only thing that prevents damage is blocking cover. So that's going to be for a CAV, 3 levels of obstruction terrain or higher, okay? Now, let's take our building away. Does that all make sense? Are we all on the same page now? Okay, so we're going to take away our big building, and we're going to come over here and we're going to put this building in, okay? And this one's kind of, actually, let's do it this way, because these are scaled right. We need a level 2. Okay. Vehicles are 1 level. So for vehicles, obstruction cover is 1 level. So as the case of this was a level 1 building and the vehicle or the infantry is up against it within 1 inch, then that's blocking cover. Okay. So now in this situation, we have our friendly CAV here behind a level 2. And he's within 1 inch of that. So in this case, they can shoot at each other with direct fire. This particular cover gives this CAV heavy cover, but it does not give any cover to this CAV because he's not within 1 inch. Oh, something else. Let me go back because I wanted to touch this too. I don't think it directly says this in the book, and maybe it got put in the FAQ or it got forgotten in a deal. All right. Let's say, and generally this would be a hill or something like that, but let's say this guy is within 1 inch of the blocking cover, and then you got an inch up here from the same line, and this guy is within 1 inch of blocking cover. In this situation, the fact that both of them are within 1 inch of that same cover negates that cover. Okay? So at this point, they can direct fire each other. They wouldn't necessarily be able to do rockets because of minimum range. But anytime that 2 models are both within 1 inch, it negates that cover. I don't remember if it officially got put in an FAQ or not, but yeah, there are no punch, no kick tables. Well, the corners are going to be, you're going to have the middle to middle still. So if you draw, even though they both can be within an inch or whatever, if you go from center to center and the line still hits the building, they can't see each other. What I'm talking about here is on different levels, or we'll have some other examples here. But if you can do a line of sight from center to center, from here to here, okay, and they're both within 1 inch, this guy doesn't have blocking cover. So just keep that in mind if that situation comes up. And we used to have there's ways that you can do the shadow, and stuff like that. And maybe as an alternate or something down the road, we'll put something together for that. Okay. Oh, I wanted to level 2 here. All right, so we've got the level 2 piece of terrain between the two CAVs. Now, in this case, he has heavy cover because it's a level 2. He does not have any cover because he's not within 1 inch of this. So they can shoot at each other. This cover will decrease his target point by 2. So if he needed a target point 5, now he needs a target point 7. And that kind of came up in that forum post for those that have read that, is how going forward, how we're going to kind of put numbers together. Rather than add and subtract and you put them on rolls, you put them on there, is you're going to take any modifier and you're going to apply it to the target point. So when we do the update and everything like that, your situation modifier numbers are actually going to reverse. So if it's a negative number, you'll reduce it from a target point. If it's a positive number, you'll add it to a target point. So actually, plus numbers help the defender and negative numbers help the attacker. I know that seems kind of back-asswards, but that's the way it needs to work with our target points. That way you can get your target point up and down and get it to say your target point is a 5, and then when you're rolling dice, you're always rolling against 5s. You're not having to figure out, did I need to add this to this dice or whatever like that. You just roll your dice. So if you have 4 attacks, you can roll 4 set of dice. You know you're using a 5, and that's what I was talking about. I usually take a D6 or a D10 or whatever, D12, and set my target point number if I'm firing a lot of stuff so that I can remember it. And that way I can look at my 4 sets of dice. Oh, this is a 3, throw that away. This is a 4, throw that away. This is a 5, I save this. This is an 8, I figure that. That way, then I can just figure the damage off of the 5 and know that whatever that is, the 8 is 3 more. Correct. Yeah. When we do the update, positive numbers help the defender, negative numbers help the attacker, because it's all going to be added or subtracted from your target point roll. That way you can take all those numbers right quick, set your target point, and then roll. There's no, well, my target point is 5, but I roll a 7 and it's a +2, so it's a 9. That's going away if that's the way you figure it. The way I'm talking about is basically how I do it already. Is when I play, I figure the target point and then I roll against the target point. All right. So in this case, his target points be 2 more, and everybody does their little shooting. All right. Now, let's say that he's far enough back here that he wants to rocket this guy. Okay? We're doing an indirect fire here. Now, do all the math and you need a 5. Yeah, and that way you're not adding to every roll or whatever. It's just you're rolling against one number and move on. And since your weaponry all comes down to the worst number, then you're always rolling against the same thing. So if you fire a worst range with a better range, everything's going to roll at the worst range. So just with the way that it goes. So that way you're not going to need, I need 5s for this and 7s for this and whatever. It's just one number. All right. So in this case, he wants to indirect fire this guy. Now, this is cover, and this is obstruction cover, but it is not blocking cover. It is heavy cover. We have light cover, we have heavy cover, and we have blocking cover. Since it is not blocking cover, he can shoot this guy. So he will pick his strike point, he'll make his strike point roll, and if he's on target or if it's close enough that he hits in the AoE, then he gets to make the combat roll. Where the difference here is the cover is applied to the combat roll. Okay? So normally with indirect fire, you roll against a 6 target point. Because of the heavy cover, you're going to roll against an 8 as your target point. If it's light cover, it would be against a 7. So the cover is still figured into the ability to do damage. It has no effect on whether you're indirect firing into this guy because you're shooting the ground. And the cover is not, whether it's there or whatever. Okay, so does that make sense? And again, in this case, if they're both within 1 inch of the cover, you ignore the cover. There is no cover. The fact that they're both within 1 inch of the cover negates the cover. Now, where that, you have to also take into account that there needs to be generally it's an edge. It's something, like a building or whatever, that they have to be able to be within 1 inch of the deal. So, and I'll make sure that this gets in there a little better so that it makes sense. In this particular instance here, okay, they're both within 1 inch of the cover. And I know what I just said. Oh, if they're both within 1 inch of the deal or whatever. But where that's gonna be defined is the fact of the width of the cover. Forests cheat. Now, they don't cheat, but it's the fact that the cover is still between them. Okay? So both of them would still get the benefit of light woods shooting through there. So just so that we're all on the deal. Once the rule gets all typed up and done nice, there'll be, like a 1 inch minimum or something that has to be between where they're at. But where generally it comes into effect is, like I said, on the edge, when you're at an edge of something or whatever. Trees, bigger buildings and stuff like that, you're not going to be able to get within an inch of that cover and negate something that's in between there. So just keep that in mind as it goes along. When it's tall enough cover like that, because trees are always considered, however many levels you want them to be. So in that case, where that'll be coming will be explained better when the actual system's put out with the update. All right. Let's see. Oh, so let's go back now and let's talk about obscurement cover. Okay. So in this case, our little guy here is within 1 inch of the edge of the trees. And this guy back here standing back here. Now, because trees have no set level, they always count when you're figuring line of sight. So in this instance here, both models have to shoot through the light woods. Okay? So if the line of sight travels through any of the light of the woods, they're both going to receive light cover. So in this case, both target point rolls, if it's a short range for, a MAC or whatever, they're both rolling against 6s, okay, as far as the target point before figuring anything else. Now, the difference here that's going to come into is with indirect fire. Since it's obscurement cover and not obstruction cover, you can target him back here behind the trees, okay? And for the purposes of the strike point roll, you ignore the woods. Because again, with the way that the systems work in the game or whatever, you know where the ground is on the other side of those trees. So you're firing over the trees and going into that particular area, okay? But because he is within 1 inch of, well, and these are heavy woods, so these would actually be a 2. Right, for the combat roll, at that point, he gets his 1. Okay? This is for indirect fire only. So when you roll your, or 2, when you roll your strike point and you're on target and you hit where this guy is or whatever, and you make your combat roll, you're rolling against an 8 rather than a 6 because he gets the benefit of the obscurement terrain. Okay? Now, something else that's come up, question before. What if I'm in the heavy woods and we decide to shoot one another? In this particular, and to direct fire, or if it's indirect, if the range is whatever, again, it's still considered that 1 inch there. So he's got 1 inch worth of woods that he's up against with his base. So again, you'll be able to target that area. Trees won't have nothing to do with the strike point. But if you are on target and you roll, he gets the benefit of heavy cover versus the combat roll. Now, if they're going to shoot at each other direct fire, again, because he's not within an inch of the edge of this side of this, they are both going to get a +2 to their target point. So instead of a 5, they're still going to need 7s. Now, and this is sort of explained in the original rulebook, but I know people like it. So let's say Bob here moves up to within an inch of that terrain, okay? If he moves up within an inch of the edge of that terrain, he is able to shoot out of it with no modifier, whereas Doug still has to shoot through the woods. Okay? You still get as long as there's woods between the two of you, you get the benefit of that. But if you're within 1 inch, then you don't have a modifier to shoot him. So that's very advantageous if you're wanting to get into woods and get in a certain firing position. That's the way that you do it. Now, if you come back over here and we put our 1 inch here, and Doug gets within 1 inch of that edge of that deal, at this point, all cover is negated. All right, this is where that runs in, that they're both within 1 inch of that line, and at that point, that cover would be there, or not be there. I'm sorry. So you ignore that, and then obviously anytime that you are base to base, that falls under the same thing. And you can come out, and again, because we measure from center to center, as long as the center of your base is still in the woods and you're within an inch, you still receive the benefit of the woods, but you don't have to shoot out through it. Hopefully I'm not confusing you more than normal. And that's where that's going to come into talking about, the guys being within an inch of you. Correct. Cover has no effect whatsoever on close combat. There's never a cover modifier in close combat. So let's say in this case, and this will be kind of how that rule goes we were talking about earlier, is if the area that you're trying to decide whether it negates. So like in this case, if they're standing on either side of a level 1 building, they're both within 1 inch, and the the two can touch and still hang over, then that would be when cover would be negated. Where cover wouldn't be negated would be like on this bigger, wider building here. So let's say this guy's here, there, okay? So in this particular instance, you would basically measure the width of the building. So if that's 2 inches or less, cover's negated. If it's not, then they both would each receive their cover at that point. But yeah, no, cover never has any effect on close combat. And you can also, just as an example too, we got some hills here, okay? So let's say this guy is right here at the edge, and then this guy comes up and can get in base-to-base contact. Even though they're on alternate levels, you can still, as long as the elevation level is 1 or less, you can still have close combat there. Now, if he was far enough back where you couldn't get up here and stand, because the rule that I always use is you can go anywhere that your model can stand by itself. So if he can't get up there and stand by himself, you're not going to have close combat, okay? But if he's here and he can get edge to edge, even though they're on different levels, if it's 1 or less, then you can do close combat. Now, if he's up here on a level 2 and he can still get close enough to have his edge on there, they cannot do close combat here because there's more than a 1 elevation difference. So in this case, this would just be point blank shooting and not close combat. But one thing that I try to always do too, especially when we're playing with this kind of terrain, is let's say, however you build your hills and you've got your hills there, that's not right because you can't go up a level 2. So let's do it like this here. Okay, so what I always try to do is when we're playing a game is, let's say in this instance here, we have a level 1 and it comes up to a level 2, and you can see a little bit of the top, a little bit of the green, but there's no way that guy can stay up there, okay? Correct. There's never any cover in close combat. Never. I can't think of any situation whatsoever that there is ever cover in close combat. Oh, yes. Yeah. Neither of them would have heavy cover because of being within 1 inch of the edge. Correct. So what I always do here in this situation is, but you need to get up here and you can't normally do, a 2, is I always let people, if there's some of the top showing, I allow people to move through there. So if he wanted to go and he's come up here and he's got enough movement points, so he goes 1, 2, 3, 4, and then can keep on moving. All right, I allow that. Where he wouldn't be allowed would be as if he only had the 1 point left, and or 2 points. He's got 2 points left. So he wants to move ahead, but he doesn't have enough to go any further. Well, if he can't stand up there unassisted, then I don't allow you to do that. You have to be able to have that area on there. So, so that's where that comes into. If you want to play it that way, that's why I always play it. Because, these guys obviously would be able to put their foot down if they were running or whatever and kind of make a running deal at it. All right, can a third party shoot into close combat? And if so, can you use the opponent's mech as cover? Yes, you can shoot into close assault combat if you so desire. But this goes back to CAVs or vehicles, in the case may be, are considered obscure cover, not obstruction cover. So, because obviously, you can see around the CAV, whatever in that situation, or if they're off center a little bit. So let's say you've got two CAVs here that are together and they're doing close combat. Okay. Then we have Larry over here. Now he's on Bob's side, but he wants to kill Doug. All right. In this particular instance, he cannot shoot Doug with direct fire because CAVs are 3 levels tall and are blocking cover. So even though, and it's obstruction cover, so if he wants to fire rockets over Bob to shoot Doug, he can do that. Of course, there's a chance with rockets that he might hit Bob too. So that this came up, and that was the direction I was going there, that James was asking about, is in this particular case, they cannot direct fire each other because of line of sight, but he can indirect fire at him and do damage to him because CAVs, vehicles, whatever, are considered obscurement cover, not obstruction cover. Now, if they're like this, Larry wants to shoot Doug, go for it. We have a direct line, we go center to center. I'm not going through this guy's base, so I'm good to go. I shoot him, I do whatever I want to do. Does that make sense? And this is where you get into, you want to be careful, because let's say no is her rule, where that goes back into that's a whole can of worms we don't want to get into. Did it go to the left? Did it go to the right? Did it go down, top, whatever. Now with rockets, yes. I mean, if everybody gets caught in the AOE, then everybody's eligible to be whacked. And I have seen times where they had to do it just because there was so many enemy in the area that they needed to be able to hit the guys worse than they needed to worry about damaging their guy. Now, one of the things too that you have to make sure that you pay attention to is once you close assault somebody, you cannot shoot on attack anybody else. So let me show you how that works here. So let's say we've got Larry, we've got Bob, and we got Doug. Doug runs up to Bob, declares a close assault. They roll, they do their little thing, whatever like that. Then this time, though, we're going to say Larry is on Bob's side, okay? Because this way we need it to work. So let's say, so they do their close assault. Then it becomes Bob's turn to attack, okay? We'll get rid of Larry and bring in Jim. That way it will make more sense because they're both red. So this will be Jim. So Jim and Doug Jim and Bob are on the same side fighting Doug. Doug comes up here, does a close assault. They do their thing, blah, 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 like that. All right. Now it's Bob's activation. Actually, and we'll bring Larry back in over here. So we got Larry. Larry's on. We got Larry and Doug and Bob and Jim. All right. So Doug comes up, does his close assault. Bob is more worried about this guy than he is this guy. If he wants to, he can decide to, instead of attacking or close combat or whatever, because he didn't declare the close combat. Larry declared it. I'm sorry, Doug declared it. Get all my names screwed up. Larry declared it. So he did not. So if he hasn't declared close combat with somebody, he doesn't have to close combat this guy when it's his turn. So if he would rather shoot Jim, he can. Yeah, Larry Moore Curly. All right, so they roll and they go on and a deal like that. So we get another activation, another turn. So now Doug realizes that Larry over here is getting ready to jump on him, and he needs to worry about that one. Because he's initiated close combat and hasn't done a break yet, he cannot shoot this guy. He's still tied up in close combat with this guy. So he's either got to decide to do close combat again, or he's got to do a break. Now, if he does a break and there's loose, then for the second action, now he can shoot this guy. But as long as you have declared close combat and you have not yet broken from that close combat, you cannot shoot and attack anybody else. So you need to be very cognizant of that. If somebody brings up a little guy and close combats you, all right, and then it's your turn to activate, you may not want to close assault him, okay? Correct. Someone else declaring close combat on you does not lock you into close combat. You have to roll. To move, you still have to break because you've been in a close combat. But if you did not initiate close combat, you are not required to reciprocate that, okay? If you do, though, then both of you are locked into that until one of you breaks. So sometimes it's more advantageous for you. So if a little guy comes up and close assaults you, you may not want to close assault him, because if it comes up that you needed to shoot this guy or a different guy, you can't do that if you've initiated close combat. Now, if you have weapons that you can fire point blank, you can shoot this guy without declaring close combat. Just the fact that you're in base to base does not automatically make you have to always declare close combat. So if he's sitting here with 4 particle bolt guns and he would rather point blank this guy with 4 particle bolt guns, he can. Exactly. They cannot use the fact that they are close combating you, tying you up so that you cannot fight. Because if you didn't, that's exactly what would be happening, is everybody would be taking a little infantry out there, dumping close combat on top of all the emperors and keeping them locked up, while everybody else sits around in a circle and shoots the emperors. All right, so it's after 9 o'clock. I am sure that I have caused more confusion than I've solved or made better. I hope not. But sometimes when I'm doing these, I'm kind of shooting them off the hip. So I guess I'd do better if I had notes where I was reading it off, make sure I'm telling you the right thing every time. Until I get confused with Larry and Bob and Doug and Jim and get really all screwed up. Okay, so any questions about anything that we talked about last minute? Something that I can fill in for you before we call it a night? Jim. Yeah, this was Jim. No, this was Jim. I'm sorry. This was Jim. This was Larry. This is Bob. This is Doug. Doug and Jim are on the same side. Larry and Bob. Larry and Bob are on the same side. Doug and Jim's. Oh, great. All right. What do you not understand, Elmrin? I'm here for you right now. We'll talk about it. What can I do for you? Ask me, and I will tell you, grasshopper. We'll just use Bob and Doug. We'll take Jim and Larry out of the equation. Yes, if you come up here and close combat me, okay, we roll off and everything, then it's your turn to activate. You do not have to reciprocate close combat. It is if you decide that that's the way that you're going to do it. Because here's what that is and you can look at it as this guy's maneuvering more or whatever, however you want to do that. Because if you allowed, that goes into that other situation. If I want to take your guns out of the game, all I need to do is run up here and close combat you, and then you're locked into close combat till one of us breaks. So while we're here, I've got my little tiny guy, and I've come up here and I've locked your big guy, but because I've got 5 damage tracks, I might tie you up for the next 2 or 3 turns. And yes, my guy's going to die, but I've taken your big guns out of the game for 2 or 3 turns. And while we're doing that, all the rest of my guys are killing you. No. If you want, of course, if all you got is max, you're not going to be able to shoot him because of minimum ranges. But he cannot come up and close assault you for using that as a tactic to take you out of the game. Now, he can do that. You cannot move until you break. But if you decide not to close combat him and shoot somebody else, all that is already figured into those numbers. The close combat numbers are an amalgamation of things that we take into account, your armor, the damage that you can do or whatever, and stuff like that. Because you're losing those essays, it's just a wash. And and again, it's just a big abstraction. So you try to come into a whole nother level of things that goes in there. So that's where that is. So if a Reaper wins close combat, does it just win or does it do damage? It just wins. If you do not have a weapon system that you are capable of doing damage with, you cannot damage a model in close combat. You can roll and get your number, and if you win, then you don't take any damage, but you can't do any damage. And I think on the new color cards, the way that I have been indicating that is up there where the close combat numbers are. If there's an asterisk next to that, that means that you have no ability to do damage in close combat. But and this all goes into the way the current system is. So if you look at the errata and the way that's explained in there, that's how this is all going to find. That may change some in the final version of the update, but that's, again, those have to be put in there that way in order to keep somebody from using close combat in order to tie somebody up. So, FYI. Okay, if I'm out of ammo at bad range with almost everything, but still have a little machine gun that lets me roll at full CC and still do damage. Yes, if you have that ability to still do damage with that, then yes. A rhino cannot, but an ogre can. I don't want, rhino doesn't have anything short ranged. He's guided missiles and max or MRAX, so he's got a minimum range of 1 and whatever. Yes, but MRAX still have a minimum range. Correct. Yeah, MRAX, MAX, guided missiles, rockets, anything with a minimum range is not counted into close combat. And you got to remember too, like I said, there's a crazy equation that gets figured into figuring out those numbers. And some of your close combat ability comes from the fact that you're, if you have a lot of armor, for your size, if you're a bigger guy, things like that. Is it exactly 100% perfect every time? No. But trying to figure out how to put that together with all the variables that could possibly come up, that might come up, it's just not worth it. It's not going to be so far off that it's going to fall apart. All right, guys. Well, I'm going home, or I'm going to at least go get some dinner and figure out where I'm going to sleep tonight, depending on how hot or cold it is out there. So I appreciate everybody being here, as always. Taco Wednesday? No, it's probably not Taco Wednesday. It's probably go get a McDonald's sandwich and go sit in the camper tonight. So anyway. All right, guys. Thanks for being here. Hang in there. We're getting stuff all cleaned up and prettied up for you. So everything will be better. And I will talk to you later. Chris will be here Saturday again, working on. The Scorpion was super, super close. I've got him taking some off the ass of it a little bit. So I don't know if he's going to plan on working on that or he's going to start switching over to the Spider. So, because he's going to do the Scorpion, and once we had all that done, he's going to turn over and do the Spider. You're going to love the way that I'm having him do the front legs on the Spider. I'm not going to give anything away. It's going to definitely give it a one-of-a-kind look. So, anyway, take care. Good night. I will talk at you later.